Over at SMA, our school, we teach kids about voice levels. And they go from 0 to 3. 3 is your outside voice. Have at it, kids. Use as loud a voice as you want outside within reason. 2 is your inside voice for the classroom. 1 is your whispering voice for places like the library. And voice level 0, total silence, is meant for here every Monday and for when there's tests being taken and things like that. What you do with your voice is really meaningful throughout your life, so it's important that the kids know this. I know that when I was a young teacher, I made the beginner's mistake that many teachers make of raising their voice when they want the kids' attention. But master teachers don't do that. They don't raise their voice, they lower their voice. If you raise your voice in a classroom, it's a sign that you've lost control. But if you lower your voice, the kids hate that. If you stay quiet for a minute, the kids will start saying to each other, throwing elbows, shh, shh, he's serious this time, shh. Voice level 0 is a powerful thing. I wish someone had clued Peter in on that for this story that we just heard. The value of voice level 0. He just saw a miracle, this amazing moment, and he did what a lot of us do. He started thinking he could add to it with words. Whoa, you mean you know those guys? This is great. You know what we could do? We ought to build something here. I know a guy who could pour a concrete slab. I bet if I call... On and on and on. And it says right after that he didn't know what he was saying. He was kind of babbling. He didn't know what he was saying. I think it's a real consolation for us that Peter does stuff like this, because he does it pretty often. You know, Peter's the number 1 apostle, but he usually starts off on the wrong foot. And I think that's great news for all of us, because he eventually gets there. And that's true for a lot of us, too. But it's interesting that he didn't know what he was saying. Something really powerful to notice is that the word listen and the word silent have all the same letters. They're basically the same word in a different order. And you hear that in the gospel. It says that a voice came from the cloud that said, "This is my chosen son. Listen to him." And at that moment, it says in the next line, they fell silent. Listen and silent are the same thing. And all of us are being given the opportunity to ask ourselves what our relationship is with silence. Silence is hard for a lot of people. You know, when you're with a friend, it takes a deep friendship to be able to be silent together. Friends that are acquaintances, it's not comfortable for them to just sit together in silence. It feels like something's wrong. And when someone is telling us something, we sometimes feel like being silent is the wrong thing to do, as if we're abandoning them in the silence. But that's not abandoning them. Walking away would be abandoning them, but sitting silently and listening to them, that's actually presence to the max. That's being there for them in the most serious kind of way. Maybe a lot of us have a hard time with that because we don't know what to say. So we fill in the space with words. And actually, what communication experts will tell us is, the more important the conversation is, the more important it is to be silent. And if at the end you don't have anything to say that. Say, I don't know what to say right now, but I'm just so glad you told me. Thank you for trusting me to hear that. 5 years ago this week, I don't even need to tell you what I'm referring to. 5 years ago, March of 2020, how did we survive that pandemic? It's just unbelievable that it's been 5 years. Everything is just so vivid from that time. I was a pastor in the Hudson Valley at that time, and because people weren't going to church, I was trying to figure out, how are we going to connect with people? How are we going to stay connected? So I got the idea of doing a podcast, and it was kind of based on how hard it felt like COVID was going to be. We started realizing, oh my gosh, we're going to have to endure a lot right now. So I thought about it, and I thought, there's lots of parishioners who know about enduring things. I had gotten to know them over the years, and I thought, there's people here that have endured unthinkable things. So I called some of them up, and I said, would you ever want to have a conversation with me about how you endured whatever it was that happened in your life, and we could record it and make a podcast out of it? And unbelievably, 30 people said yes. So now, although I haven't recorded anything new in 3 years, there's this treasury of conversations with 30 people who've been through hard things, and it's called Profiles of Endurance. And it's still out there anywhere you get podcasts. Actually, maybe we'll put it on our social media platforms this week so you have a way to get close to it. But I almost don't want you to listen to it. The conversations are beautiful, but I'm embarrassed by what I do during these conversations. I talk way too much. In an hour conversation, it feels like 50 minutes of it is me. And it comes out in a lot of ways. They would say something, and I would say, you know what that reminds me of? Yada, yada, yada. Or I would ask them a question, and all of a sudden, I would insert myself into it. I'd say, the question I want to ask next, and this comes from my experience as a school bus driver, which was a really interesting time. Yada, yada, yada. As a matter of fact, even when I'm trying to actively listen, it's just too much. I'm going like, wow, ooh, oh, I did, you don't say. And none of it's necessary. Have you ever had a really good listener in your life? Do you have someone in your life who's a really good listener? I hope you do. And if you don't right now, I hope that you find one, because there's nothing like that. When you're with a really good listener, they all do some version of the same thing. They lock their eyes right on you. They usually lower their hands, put them on their lap or by their side. And the very best ones don't make a sound. The very best ones are so quiet that if you look away, you'll think, oh my gosh, have they dozed off? But when you look back, they're locked in on you, taking it all in. It turns out that being silent is one of the hardest things for humans to do. And there's all sorts of research on this. The one that interested me the most was a study done a few years ago by the University of Virginia. They did a fascinating test. They put volunteers in a room by themselves, and they said, you need to be silent for 15 minutes. But if at any point you don't want to do it anymore, push this button. It'll give you an unpleasant electric shock. Not dangerous, but kind of like putting your finger in a light socket. But if you do that, you get to walk out of the room, and you can end the experiment. It turns out that 46% of people took the shock before the 15 minutes were up. And I won't add any commentary to this, but it said that of the people who took the shock, 25% of women made that choice, and 67% of men. And I don't know at what point, I don't have that information of the study. Was it 7 minutes in? Was it 13 minutes in? I don't know. But doesn't that say something? We would rather get shocked with electricity than be quiet for 15 minutes. So, this week we are being invited to ask ourselves, how skilled am I at listening silently? When someone tells me something, Do I have the instincts to know how to receive it? The more important the topic is, the more important the silence is. So if somebody tells us, just this week, I was diagnosed with cancer, we might be tempted to say, for good reason, oh, my sister's boss had that same cancer. Let me tell you more about that experience. That doesn't help. It feels like it's going to. But if you think about it, no. Somebody who just found out they have cancer, they don't want to hear about your sister's boss. Maybe in a further conversation, maybe if you call them in a day or two, that might be nice. But right in the moment, no. The same thing is true with loss. If someone tells us they lost their mom last week, we might say, well, my mom's still alive, but boy, losing my aunt was just terrible. It's not helpful. Even if we've lost our mother, it's not helpful necessarily, not in the first conversation, maybe later on, but people need our silence. They need what the best listeners do. Eyes locked on them, hands down, total receiving. That's why maybe they say that a smart person knows what to say, but a wise person knows when to say it. I want to share something with you that's helped me. It's the slogan, WAIT, W-A-I-T. You're supposed to apply it when you're listening to somebody. W-A-I-T. Why am I talking? So simple, but so helpful. Do I need to be talking right now, or is it time for me to just quiet right down and receive whatever is being given? Sometimes what we need most is to just imitate the best listeners out there and bring our voice level to zero. Because it turns out, listen and silent are the same thing.